Pro Football Talk wrote about what a exciting start to the season it's been. This was yesterday. And I know this is dated, but this was yesterday morning, pointing out that 23 games had been decided in the final minute or overtime, only for last night's game to come down to the final minute. So make that 24 games decided in the final minute or overtime through 6 weeks, 11 overtime games, and road teams are 50 and 39. As we welcome in Charles Robinson from Yahoo. Charles, I don't want to steal your thunder because we were texting about this earlier, but just like, how would you describe what we've seen so far with these games coming down to the final minute, overtime, field goal kicking being anything but automatic?
Teams going for it on fourth down.
Yes, of course.
I'm telling you, I think this is, and you and I were texting about this. I think this is one of the greatest on-field seasons so far in NFL history. I think coming out of a pandemic year where fans weren't in stadiums. Now it's obviously we're still dealing with COVID and everything, but everybody comes back into the stadiums. We're 6 weeks in, and I defy you to have true confidence in telling me the AFC's Super Bowl team and the NFC Super Bowl team. It could be, you can make a decent argument for 8-10 teams right now collectively being realistically capable of going on a Super Bowl run. As you said, the fourth downs, the kicking, the road teams. It's just, I would like to know what the failure rate of Vegas is when it comes to like teams covering, favorites covering. It's quarterbacks everywhere are fun to watch. There's very few, and I think there's even very few teams that you can point at through 6 weeks and just go, there's no way that team is an absolute flaming wreck and they're not going to win. They're incapable of winning a game this weekend. Maybe. I mean, Jacksonville's been competitive the last two. Detroit, maybe. I mean, probably have, but Detroit's been close a couple of times. Even the bad teams have had games where some weird things had to happen for them to continue to lose. Tucker hitting that field goal. It's just, I think in total on the field, what we're seeing in terms of the product and the excitement of it and where the games are going and how the primetime games have played out, it's got to be one of the most exciting seasons in NFL history.
Especially the primetime games. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not just what we're seeing on Sundays, but what we're seeing on even Thursdays, for crying out loud. But definitely Sunday and Monday night, everybody's going to bed. You can't go to bed. Just forget your sleep, forget Tuesday morning, because you're going to miss an exciting finish. Want to follow up with you, though, because Michael and I have had, it feels like, several versions of this conversation in the last couple of weeks. We had one with you last week about the best team in the NFC. And the Cardinals had this great tweet in response to Sports Illustrated's power ranking. Sports Illustrated had Super Bowl contenders, 1 Rams, 2 Bucks, 3 Chiefs, 4 Ravens. And then they had dark horse contenders, 49ers, Saints, Vikings, and Colts, based on the Monday morning quarterback power rankings. And the Cardinals did the Jordan meme, and I took that personally. I don't feel like I gave the Cardinals enough love yesterday for beating the brakes off the Browns and for beating COVID, for crying out loud. And then over in the AFC, everybody thought the Bills were the best team in the AFC, if not the conference, going into the weekend, only for the Ravens to beat the brakes off the Chargers and for the Bills, of course, to lose last night. So quickly, Charles, that was a long-winded way of asking you to narrow down, if you had to right now, best in the AFC, best in the NFC.
Best in the AFC. See, that's the problem. It would be the Bills if not for the sneak. Just don't sneak it in the direction of that guy. Don't pick Simmons. That's not the guy to sneak it toward. Go the other direction. That's the only beef I really. Right. I'm with you on this one. Not Michael Holley. I go for it because I feel like you don't have play loose. Put it in the hands of Josh Allen and hopefully the locker room, even if you lose, responds. And I think they have said, hey, we want it in our hands. We like that we were given the opportunity to win or lose that game in that scenario. So I still think it's the Bills. And I think no one would have any argument about saying that if they score a touchdown. As far as the NFC goes, I I can't take anything away from the Cardinals because the Cardinals they're consistently beating everybody you put in front of them. Yes, you can say it was a banged up Cleveland team. Okay. But the truth is it wasn't even as close as the score indicated. And
Right.
if you can get, and by the way, Cliff Kingsbury wasn't there. This is the assistants calling the game, the OC and the DC that are calling the game. And it's the Cardinals are, I don't know why are you going to knock them now? I mean, they're knocking down everybody you put in front of them. And that's another thing, by the way, that I think is really exciting about this season is that you could make an argument that the best team in the league, the most fun team to watch in the league, has a 5'8" quarterback, 5'8"-ish, 9-ish quarterback. And I mean, he's like turning the league on its ear. And then the coach was the guy who I thought was on the hot seat when the season started.
Yeah.
All right. Listen, I'm not trying to go over this thing again. I'm not trying to go over this again.
We don't even get in this argument. Come on, let's not argue this.
I'm not. I just want to ask, was it ever in question? I have two questions. One, before last night, was there a question in Western New York? Was there a question in the locker room about the trust, the faith that Sean McDermott had in the team? Like, what does that have to do with anything? Of course he had faith in the team. What? Hey, I need to let the guys know. Why? They already know. Was that on the table?
No, I mean, I don't think it's.
Was that a column in the Buffalo News?
No, listen. I don't think it was him sending the signal to them that he trusted them. It was just him trusting them. It wasn't him saying to them, hey, I'm trying to let you know that I trust you this much to win or lose the game. No, he just trusts them. That was the act itself. It wasn't a message. It was the act. It was, I trust you. I believe in you. We put this in this situation. I'm going to put it in the hands of Josh Allen. We win or lose, I'm good with that. However it rides out.
Yeah.
This is how I feel, and I'm not. He's not trying to show anybody anything. He's just doing it. He's living out what is his best life, and that's putting the game in Josh Allen's hands. And he's fine with how the chips fall on the other side of it. Okay.
Yeah, I want to live my best life too. I also want to live my best life, but I just feel like I don't take winning games so casually. I think it's so. Put it this way. Yeah, it's aggressive and all that, but just percentage-wise, what's your percentage of picking up the 4th and 1 versus what's your percentage of making a chip shot field goal? I think the chip shot field goal percentage is higher. I just want to give myself the best chance of winning the game. Even though 4th and 1 sounds good and you're that close, I think the percentages are better on the chip shot field goal. I could be wrong, but that's not what I want to ask you. I want to ask you from the other side. Mike asked a great question earlier. I didn't give him a good answer. I hope you can. What do you think Mike Vrabel's logic was for how he handled the final minute of the game, keeping some timeouts in his pocket?
I think he was doing the same thing Sean McDermott was doing. I think Sean McDermott put it in the hands of his players. I think Mike Vrabel did the same thing. He said, I'm leaning on the defense to stop them in this situation. I think Mike assumed if it got into a situation where they did stop them, that they would kick the field goal and go to overtime. Now, me personally, I'm not big on saving timeouts. I think you call the timeouts and, you try to give yourself an opportunity to go down the field and respond because you can't take the timeouts with you. But I think it's the same thing Sean did. Like, he just put it on his players to make the stop, in the red zone, and ultimately they did. That's how I viewed it.
So at the opposite end of the spectrum, though, on the subject of trust, and we talked a lot about the Cowboys yesterday. We about their walk-off win against the Patriots. Michael, you know this, and I'd actually love to hear I gave you a jab earlier, Michael, but I don't think you ever actually responded to the particulars of that jab. So here's your opportunity to respond to that as well, being in the Boston area and obviously knowing Bill Belichick like you do. Charles, I'm sure you've seen that Bill Belichick is coming under a lot of criticism. He's gone for it 3 times all year. I believe that's 30th in the league. There were 2 instances on 4th down near midfield, including in overtime, where he didn't go for it, not to mention taking a knee with plenty of time left before halftime against the Cowboys this past week. And of course, having an injured Nick Foles kick a 56-yard field goal against the Bucs instead of going for it on fourth down. I wonder, and then we talk about Brandon Staley and him being super aggressive when it comes to going for it on fourth down against the Ravens in his own territory. In general, but specifically Bill Belichick, how do you see the evolution occurring in the NFL when it comes to fourth down? It's become the norm, and Michael's take, being conservative and kicking a field goal, taking the points and playing for overtime, he's more in the minority right now. It feels like Michael and Bill Belichick are playing yesterday's game, where the modern game, whether it's analytics driven or whatever, is to be aggressive on fourth down, especially at midfield and closer.
I think it's the trend. I just think it's trends. I think that NFL, the tide rises and falls every season with something. And to me, remember, it was like the Wildcat. You know, the Patriots pulled out the Dolphins pulled out the Wildcat against the Patriots. It was, you know, whatever year that was, and everybody went nuts. And the next thing you know, everybody had to have a Wildcat package. Every single team had to have a specific player that was in the fold to be able to run the Wildcat at some point. And what happened? We watched that for a while. People figured out how to counteract it. They ran the numbers on it, and eventually it died. It died out. We don't really ever see that anymore as a viable package in the NFL. I think you know, it's just the numbers get crunched, and eventually defenses figure out ways to adjust, or there's always a counter to it, and that changes things. We saw it with onside kicks for a while. It was like, oh, well, what if we start the second half with an onside kick, and what does that do for us? This might be a little more permanent, just because I don't know that the numbers ever skew in the opposite direction, unless there's just like a total failure over and over, or there's situations where coaches are costing themselves so dearly that it jeopardizes their jobs. And then coaches are like, I'm not doing that anymore because I want to keep my job. Then maybe I can see that adjusting, but I don't know. Maybe this is one of those wrinkles that it remains because it's static. It's not like defenses can just all of a sudden figure out how to stop a fourth and going for it. I would say this, maybe we won't see so many 4th and 2s, 4th and 3s. You know, we won't see it in certain territories of the field, but we could get to a point where every 4th and 1, unless it's you're in a certain area of the field, you're always going for it. It feels like the Browns have gone like the Browns, the Chargers.
They always get sacked. The Browns, and it never works. The Browns don't work.
It doesn't work.
Sorry, Mike.
It doesn't work a lot.
Every time they're in close, they go for it, and Baker Mayfield gets sacked. That is absolute. They're 100% failure rate on fourth down.
It has happened. It has definitely felt like it's happened. It's happened a lot.
Well, says the guy who had Odell Beckham on his fantasy team before trading him. Michael, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know what? No, fellas. Mike and Charles, and I got to say, Charles, you hit it on the head. You talked about trends. It is a trendy thing, but I think Bill Belichick predated the trend, and before he did that, Bill Parcells did. See, like, you know, it's funny, like Parcells, in your mind's eye, you think of Parcells with the Giants and, hey, running game, tough running game, and tough defense with Lawrence Taylor and Marshall and all those guys, but really, and Pepper Johnson. But Parcells was always aggressive on fourth down. You can look it up. He did it he was aggressive on fourth down with the Giants. He really became aggressive on fourth down when he coached the Patriots before Bill Belichick did. And then Belichick did famously 4th and 2 against the Colts in 2009. So it's about a dozen years ago from his own 27. You know, going for it, and it was unsuccessful.
That's why it's so surprising
I don't
to see
think
him not do it now.
Well, not really, because I think he always did it. There was always Bill Belichick respects analytics, but he doesn't live and die by it. And see, like, and I that's why he's my spirit animal in that way. I respect analytics too. I just have a problem when people just hold on to it and think, hey, we got something new. This has never happened before. No, it's not new. And it's not always right. You don't always go for it on fourth down, even though the data says, hey, fourth down is not some scary place. And so I think what he's looking at it, The only time I've disagreed with him is in that Bucks game you mentioned. Like 56 yards in a rainstorm, I think that was just stupid. I think he should have gone for it on fourth down.
There's an element
a couple of times on Sunday, I agree with him.
There's an element too. We always talk about analytics. When do you go for it versus not going for it? Let's be honest. It really should be a hybridization of analytics plus personnel. Do you have the personnel to actually do this? The numbers might say this is the smart thing to do. Does the roster say it? Do you have the players to pull off this? Just because the math says X, the personnel department might say Y. There are times where you should go for it, but you're like, okay, well, we're the Browns. We don't have our best running back. We don't have our 2 starting offensive tackles. We've lost now our second best running back. If it's 4th and 1 in that situation, probably don't go for it, because you're like, we don't have the personnel that can make the analytics stand up in this situation. So it's not just numbers, and I'll give that to Bill. Maybe Bill's looking at this and saying, well, hey, maybe we don't have what I think is necessary personnel-wise to actually make the analytics successful time after time.
Hey, man, we appreciate you. We got to get going. We got another guest standing by. But, hey, real quick before we let you go, real quick, y'all. Pete Carroll said they have been in touch with Cam Newton, for whatever that's worth. He got the jab. He's gotten vaccinated. You hearing anything percolating about whether or not the jab equals a job opportunity?
Cam says it. Cam maintains that he's already gotten offers. So, I'll take Cam at his word that there are teams that have already offered him the ability to come on board. So I've not heard that from team side, and I know Pete had that conversation. I don't think Cam's the only quarterback that Pete has reached out to. I have heard that there are other quarterbacks that Cam or Pete has reached out to. So, I think Cam will be back in the league by the end of the year. I really do. I think that a team will find a need for him.
All right. It'll be interesting. It'll only add to what Charles Robinson says is the most exciting NFL season in recent memory. I like that take. Numbers support it.